There's a good chance you used one today. Maybe you reheated your morning coffee. Perhaps you made a bag of popcorn while watching a movie. Or you defrosted something for dinner in a matter of minutes instead of hours. The microwave oven has become so ubiquitous, so thoroughly woven into the fabric of modern life, that we rarely stop to think about where it came from. Over 90% of American households have one. Restaurants, hospitals, offices, dormitories, cruise ships, and military bases all depend on them. The technology has fundamentally changed how humanity prepares and consumes food. And it all started with a melted chocolate bar and a man who never finished the 5th grade. Percy Spencer was born into poverty in rural Maine, orphaned before he could walk, and working in a factory by age 12. He never attended high school, never went to college, never received any formal training in engineering or physics, and yet he became one of the most prolific inventors of the 20th century, holding over 150 patents and earning the respect of MIT physicists who marveled at his ability to absorb scientific knowledge through his skin. He helped win World War II by revolutionizing radar production. He invented a device that now sits in nearly every kitchen in the developed world. And he did it all through sheer curiosity, tireless self-education, and what one colleague called an itch to know. This is the story of Percy Spencer, the orphan from Maine who changed how the world eats. Percy Spencer was born on July 19, 1894, in Howland, Maine, a small mill town about 25 miles north of Orono, nestled among the forests and rivers of the Pine Tree State. It was a place of harsh winters, remote communities, and hardworking people who made their living from the land and the lumber mills. Percy's father died when he was just 18 months old. His mother, unable or unwilling to care for him alone, sent the toddler to live with his aunt and uncle in the nearby community of South Lincoln. It was the first of many abandonments Percy would endure. For a few years, life with his aunt and uncle provided some stability. But when Percy was 7 years old, his uncle died too. The boy was now twice orphaned, his father dead, his mother absent, his uncle gone. He was left in the care of his widowed aunt, a woman who made her meager living as an itinerant weaver. The two of them traveled around New England, existing on what she earned from weaving and whatever odd jobs young Percy could pick up. It was a hardscrabble existence, moving from place to place, never quite settled, always struggling to make ends meet. Years later, Spencer would describe this period of his life with characteristic understatement. He had to solve my own situation, he said. It was a phrase that would define his entire approach to life. When faced with a problem, figure it out yourself. Don't wait for someone to teach you. Don't complain about what you don't have. Just solve it. Percy attended school sporadically during these wandering years, but his formal education came to an end around the 5th grade when he was approximately 12 years old. The family needed money, and Percy needed to work. His first job was at a spool mill in South Lincoln. A spool mill manufactured the wooden spools used to hold thread in textile factories, simple wooden cylinders that required endless repetitive labor to produce. Percy worked from sunrise to sunset, day after day, earning pennies to help support himself and his aunt. It was grinding, monotonous work. But Percy Spencer was not a monotonous person. Even as his hands performed the repetitive tasks of the mill, his mind was working on other things. He was curious about how the machinery worked, how the processes fit together, how things could be done better. This curiosity, this itch to know, as Reader's Digest would later call it, would prove to be his greatest asset. Where others saw only drudgery, Percy saw opportunity to learn. When Percy was 16, he heard that a local paper mill was planning to install electricity. In 1910, electricity was still a novelty in rural Maine. Most homes and businesses were lit by kerosene lamps. Most machinery was powered by water wheels or steam engines. The electrification of the paper mill was a major event, and it captured Percy's imagination. Here was a technology he knew nothing about. Here was something new, something powerful, something that clearly represented the future. Percy wanted to understand it. The problem was that there was no one to teach him. Howland, Maine, was a remote community. There were no schools offering courses in electrical engineering, no local experts who could explain the mysteries of voltage and current and resistance. If Percy wanted to learn about electricity, he would have to teach himself. So he did. Percy scrounged textbooks wherever he could find them. He read everything he could get his hands on about electrical systems. He experimented, he tinkered, he learned by trial and error. And when the paper mill advertised for workers to help install its new electrical system, Percy applied. He was one of 3 people hired for the job, despite having no formal training, no credentials, no experience. What he had was knowledge he had acquired on his own and the confidence to apply it. The 16-year-old who had never finished grade school was now installing cutting-edge technology. In 1912, the world was transfixed by a disaster at sea. The Titanic, the largest ship ever built, struck an iceberg on its maiden voyage and sank in the North Atlantic. More than 1,500 people died in the freezing waters. But some survived, and they survived in large part because of wireless radio. The Titanic's distress signals, transmitted by the ship's radio operators, reached the nearby vessel Carpathia, which raced to the scene and rescued over 700 survivors. Without wireless communication, every soul aboard the Titanic might have perished. Percy Spencer, now 18 years old, read about the Titanic disaster with fascination. The wireless operators who had sent those desperate signals, who had helped save hundreds of lives, they captured his imagination. He wanted to be one of them. He wanted to understand this invisible technology that could send messages through the air itself. In 1912, Spencer joined the United States Navy. His goal was simple: learn about wireless communications. The Navy would give him the training he couldn't get anywhere else. "I just got hold of a lot of textbooks and taught myself while I was standing watch at night," he later recalled. This was Percy Spencer's method. Official training was helpful, but the real learning happened on his own time, driven by his own curiosity. While other sailors slept or played cards, Percy was studying calculus, trigonometry, physics, chemistry, metallurgy. He devoured textbooks on every subject that might help him understand how the world worked. He served in the Navy for several years, soaking up knowledge about radio technology. When he was eventually discharged, reportedly due to a chronic ear condition, he had transformed himself from a 5th-grade dropout into a self-taught expert in wireless communications. After leaving the Navy, Spencer found work at the Wireless Specialty Apparatus Company in Boston. He continued to develop his expertise in radio technology, building on the foundation he had established through years of self-study. Then, in 1925, he joined a small company called the American Appliance Company. The company would later change its name to Raytheon, and it would become one of the most important defense contractors in American history. Percy Spencer was among the earliest employees. He threw himself into the work of developing vacuum tubes and other electronic components, bringing his characteristic combination of hands-on tinkering and voracious self-education to every problem he encountered. His colleagues quickly recognized that Spencer was unusual. He had no degrees, no formal credentials, and yet he could solve problems that stumped trained engineers. He had an intuitive understanding of how electronic systems worked, combined with an encyclopedic knowledge acquired through decades of self-study. One MIT scientist observed that Spencer seemed to absorb physics through his skin. Vannevar Bush, the legendary engineer who would later lead America's wartime scientific research, put it more directly. Spencer earned the respect of every physicist in the country, not only for his ingenuity, but for what he has learned about physics by absorbing it through his skin. There was something else remarkable about Spencer: his temperament. A 1958 Reader's Digest profile noted that the educated scientist knows many things won't work. Percy doesn't know what can't be done. This combination, deep knowledge, practical skill, and a refusal to accept conventional limitations, would soon prove invaluable. War was coming, and Percy Spencer would play a crucial role in winning it. When World War II began, the Allies faced a desperate challenge. German submarines were hunting in wolf packs through the Atlantic, sinking ship after ship, threatening to cut off Britain's supply lines. Detecting the U-boats before they could attack was a matter of survival. The solution was radar, radio detection and ranging, a technology that could spot enemy submarines, aircraft, and ships by bouncing radio waves off them and analyzing the reflections. Radar would prove decisive in the Battle of the Atlantic and countless other engagements. At the heart of radar technology was the magnetron, a vacuum tube that generated the microwave frequency radio waves needed for effective radar systems. The British had invented a powerful new version called the cavity magnetron, and they desperately needed American manufacturing capacity to produce them in quantity. There was just one problem. Making magnetrons was incredibly difficult. The devices required precision manufacturing and careful assembly. When Raytheon received the contract to produce magnetrons in 1941, the company could manage only about 17 per day. At that rate, it would take years to equip Allied forces with the radar they needed. Percy Spencer was put in charge of solving the problem. Spencer studied the magnetron production process with his characteristic intensity. He watched how the devices were assembled. He examined the components. He thought about how each step could be simplified, streamlined, improved. According to company legend, the breakthrough came while Spencer was sitting at his desk, fidgeting with a handful of coins. He noticed how the coins stacked together, how they could be layered and aligned. Inspiration struck. The existing manufacturing process used precision copper bars that had to be individually machined, a slow and expensive approach. Spencer realized that the copper components could be stamped from sheets rather than machined, then stacked and soldered together like his coins. He replaced precision parts with simpler designs. He substituted soldered internal wires with solid rings. Step by step, he simplified the entire process. The results were staggering. Magnetron production at Raytheon went from 17 per day to 600 per day. By the end of the war, Raytheon was manufacturing over 80% of all magnetrons used by Allied forces. The impact on the war effort was enormous. American bombers equipped with radar could spot German submarine periscopes from the air. Ships could detect approaching aircraft before they were visible to the naked eye. Naval commanders knew where enemy vessels were lurking. As Commodore Jennings Dow of the U.S. Navy's Bureau of Ships observed, Raytheon radar had a marked effect on every major sea engagement of the war. For his contributions, Percy Spencer received the Distinguished Public Service Award from the U.S. Navy, the highest civilian honor the Navy bestows. The fifth-grade dropout from rural Maine had helped win the war. The war ended in 1945, but Percy Spencer kept working with magnetrons. The devices that had powered wartime radar systems were now being investigated for peacetime applications. Spencer, by this point one of the world's leading experts in microwave technology, was at the center of this research. One day in 1945, the exact date has been lost to history, Spencer was working in the Raytheon laboratory near an active magnetron. He had a candy bar in his pocket, as he often did. His favorite was a payday bar, chocolate and peanuts. When he reached for the candy bar, he discovered something strange. It had melted into a gooey mess. Others might have cursed their ruined snack and moved on. Percy Spencer was not like others. He wanted to know why the chocolate had melted. The answer, he quickly realized, was the magnetron. The device was generating microwaves, electromagnetic radiation at frequencies that could penetrate certain materials and cause water molecules to vibrate. That vibration created heat. The microwaves had passed through his clothing and heated the chocolate bar from the inside. Spencer's mind immediately leaped to the implications. If microwaves could heat chocolate, what else could they heat? Spencer's first formal experiment involved popcorn. He placed unpopped kernels near the magnetron and watched as they began to pop, jumping and dancing as they transformed into fluffy white morsels. It was the world's first microwaved popcorn. Encouraged, Spencer tried something more ambitious: an egg. He placed it in a kettle in front of the magnetron to see what would happen. What happened was that the egg exploded, splattering a colleague who had been peering into the kettle to observe the experiment. The failed egg experiment taught Spencer an important lesson. When cooking with microwaves, you need to contain the food in an enclosed space. Otherwise, things get messy. From that insight came the invention that would change the world. Spencer attached a high-density electromagnetic field generator, essentially a powerful magnetron, to an enclosed metal box. The metal walls would contain the microwaves, preventing them from escaping while allowing controlled cooking inside the chamber. He placed various food items in the box, monitoring temperatures and observing the results. He had created the first microwave oven. Raytheon recognized the potential of Spencer's discovery and quickly filed for patents. On October 8, 1945, the company submitted a patent application for a method of treating foodstuffs. Spencer was awarded U.S. patent on January 24, 1950. In 1947, Raytheon introduced the first commercial microwave oven, the Radarange. The name was a portmanteau of radar and range, as in cooking range, reflecting the device's origins in wartime radar technology. The first Radarange was not exactly a kitchen appliance. It stood nearly 6 feet tall, weighed about 750 pounds, and cost between $3,000 and $5,000, equivalent to roughly $40,000 to $70,000 today. It required special electrical wiring and plumbing for its water cooling system. It was, in short, entirely impractical for home use, but restaurants saw the potential immediately. A Radarange could reheat food in seconds instead of minutes. It could boil water faster than any conventional stove. It could defrost frozen items almost instantly. For commercial kitchens where speed was money, the microwave oven was revolutionary. The devices appeared on ocean liners, in railroad dining cars, in hospital cafeterias, and in restaurant kitchens across the country. Chefs learned to adapt their techniques to the new technology, and food companies began developing products specifically designed for microwave preparation. The transformation from commercial curiosity to household essential took another 2 decades. In 1965, Raytheon acquired Amana Refrigeration, gaining access to consumer appliance expertise and distribution networks. In 1967, Amana introduced the Radarange RR4, the first countertop microwave oven designed for home use. Priced at $495, it was still expensive but finally within reach of middle-class families. More importantly, it was small enough to fit on a kitchen counter and simple enough for anyone to operate. Sales grew slowly at first. Many consumers were suspicious of the technology. Was it safe to cook with radiation? Would it make food taste strange? Would it explode? These concerns faded as microwave ovens became more common and people saw their neighbors using them without incident. By 1975, microwave ovens were outselling traditional gas ranges. By the mid-1980s, they were present in over half of all American households. Today, that number exceeds 90%. The technology Percy Spencer created has become so commonplace that we take it for granted. But every time you press those familiar buttons, every time you wait for the beep that signals your food is ready, you are using an invention that traces directly back to a man with a melted candy bar and the curiosity to ask why. Percy Spencer continued working at Raytheon until his formal retirement in 1964, eventually rising to senior vice president and serving on the company's board of directors. Even after retirement, he remained active as a senior consultant, still tinkering and inventing well into his 70s. Over his lifetime, Spencer was awarded somewhere between 150 and 300 patents. The exact number varies depending on the source, covering innovations in vacuum tubes, microwave technology, and related fields. His contributions extended far beyond the microwave oven, though that invention would become his most famous legacy. The academic world eventually acknowledged what Spencer had achieved without formal education. He received honorary doctoral degrees from the University of Massachusetts, the University of Maine, and Nassau College, recognition that the self-taught engineer had earned the equivalent of the credentials he never had the opportunity to pursue. He was elected a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and a member of the Institute of Radio Engineers, now the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. In 1999, more than a quarter century after his death, he was posthumously inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Percy Spencer died on September 8, 1970, in Newton, Massachusetts. He was 76 years old. The microwave oven was just beginning its transformation from commercial novelty to household staple, a transformation he had lived just long enough to glimpse. For all his achievements, Percy Spencer never became wealthy from the microwave oven. Under the policies of the era, patents obtained by Raytheon employees belonged to the company, not the individual inventor. Spencer received the same compensation Raytheon gave all employees for patents, a one-time gratuity of $2. $2. For an invention that would eventually be worth billions, that would transform kitchens around the world, that would change how humanity prepares and consumes food. $2. Spencer apparently accepted this without complaint. He was a company man, a team player, a product of an era when corporate loyalty was expected and individual recognition was less important than collective achievement. The satisfaction of invention, of solving problems, of understanding how things worked, these were their own rewards. But there is something poignant about the fact that the orphan from Maine, who had worked so hard and achieved so much, never reaped the financial rewards of his most famous invention. The microwave oven made fortunes for Raytheon and Amana. Percy Spencer received $2. Percy Spencer's story is, at its heart, a story about curiosity, about the power of an active mind to overcome any obstacle, about the possibility of self-education in the face of impossible circumstances, about the rewards that come to those who never stop asking, why? He was orphaned as a toddler, abandoned by his mother, twice bereaved before he was 7 years old. He left school in the 5th grade to work in a factory. He had every excuse to accept a limited life, to see himself as a victim of circumstances, to stop trying to understand the world around him. Instead, he taught himself. Everything he accomplished, the expertise in radio technology, the breakthroughs in magnetron production, the invention of the microwave oven, grew from his relentless habit of self-education. When he didn't know something, he found a book. When he didn't understand something, he experimented until he did. I just got hold of a lot of textbooks and taught myself, he said, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. In an era when credentials and degrees often seem to be prerequisites for success, Spencer's story is a reminder that knowledge matters more than credentials, that curiosity matters more than certificates, that the determination to learn can overcome almost any disadvantage. Today, the microwave oven is everywhere. It has transformed not just cooking, but eating, enabling the rise of convenience foods, making it possible for busy families to prepare meals in minutes, allowing office workers to heat their lunches without leaving the building. The technology has continued to evolve since Spencer's day. Modern microwaves are more efficient, more powerful, and more sophisticated than the original Radarange. They include features Spencer never imagined: sensor cooking, convection options, smart technology that connects to the internet. But at their core, they still work on the principle Percy Spencer discovered in 1945. Microwaves passing through food, exciting water molecules, generating heat from the inside out. Every microwave oven in the world is a descendant of that first metal box with a magnetron attached. Percy Spencer never sought fame or recognition. He was, by all accounts, a modest man who derived his satisfaction from the work itself, from solving problems, from understanding how things worked, from that perpetual itch to know that drove him throughout his life. The educated scientist knows many things won't work, an MIT colleague observed. Percy doesn't know what can't be done. Perhaps that was his greatest gift, not knowing what was impossible and therefore being willing to try anything. The chocolate bar melted in his pocket, and where others might have seen only a ruined snack, he saw a new way to cook food. The magnetron production process was too slow, and where others might have accepted the limitations, he reimagined the entire manufacturing system. Percy Spencer was proof that genius can emerge from anywhere, from poverty, from hardship, from circumstances that would crush a lesser spirit. He was proof that education is not confined to classrooms, that knowledge belongs to anyone willing to seek it out. And every time you open a microwave door, every time you set the timer and press start, every time you hear that familiar hum followed by the beep that signals your food is ready, you are benefiting from the curiosity of an orphan from Maine who never stopped wanting to understand how things worked.